Hi guys, it's Alana and I am back again this week to talk about fine motor skills with your 6 to 12 month old and your 12 to 18 month old. So I'll be presenting a couple of different activities with some differentiation ideas depending on what age group your child is in. But when we're talking about fine motor skills, while not all of the objects that I'm going to be talking about are small, some are. And so I wanted to take a second to talk about safety. First of all, you know your child. Some children, through toddlerhood are very inclined to put things in their mouths. Some are less inclined, but always supervision is really necessary for this age group for some of these activities. And so one guideline that I just wanted to give really quickly is if you are trying to work on fine motor skills, which again, as you get to the older age range, does kind of mean being able to do that grip of really small objects. One thing to pay attention to is, if you're kind of questioning, like, is this okay to, kind of leave my child a little bit unsupervised with for them to manipulate and play around with independently, is to use the toilet paper tube test. So if something can pass easily through a toilet paper tube, then it's probably not something that you want to leave your child with independently. So like for an example here, so, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is using like flat objects like this. And so this is just a milk cap. And this is big enough that this is probably something that, your child can manipulate fairly independently and you don't have to worry about. However, if you were going to be doing an activity like some of the ones on the sheets that I'm sending to you guys with, along with this video, like things that use little cotton balls or pom-poms, those are things that would be able to pass through really easily. And so those are things that you really would want to use a high level of supervision with and make sure they all get cleaned up afterwards. So toilet paper tube, easy test to be able to tell whether or not it's something that you can provide a little more kind of hands-off time with. So the thing with fine motor skills that you want to be thinking about is it's really this development over the course of older infancy into toddlerhood from, kind of honing control. So with, younger infants, you see that they're really just trying to gain some control over, more of kind of their larger muscle movements. First, that starts with being able to intentionally kick some things, and then you see kind of some batting at things with not a lot of specificity, and then maybe some, kind of shaping toward intentional grabbing. And then what happens from there is, as they get more and more intentional and more control with things like using the pincher grasp and, eating, solid food feeding is a great one to practice that. Also, when they have some floor time and they find interesting little things on the carpet, grabbing at cords or things that have a really small circumference, that's a kind of really good challenge for them. You're kind of looking at that development of that level of control over the course of that period of time. So that's something to be kind of thinking about in terms of trying to give them some activities to develop fine motor skills, is what helps them have some incentive to want to develop that control of those smaller muscle movements. But then the other part is also the strength. And so some of these activities are also designed to look at like what is kind of helping them develop some of those muscles in their hands so they can have that grip strength. And so one of the things I always talk about is that, if you look at like how this serves them in the future, ultimately these are skills that they'll need to have when they start being able to grasp a pencil for writing. However, they also serve their own purpose just in a child being able to master things in their own environment and be able to manipulate objects in the way that they want to. And so these are great skills to encourage for that reason. So, the handouts that I'm sending you, like I said, have a ton of different ideas for different age groups, and they also give a little bit of a breakdown of like what these skills look like for the 6 to 12 month set and the 12 to 18 month set. So you guys can check those out. But I just wanted to demonstrate a couple here. And again, I just want to give the disclaimer that, this is in no way meant to put any pressure on you guys to say, oh, you should be doing all of these things with your babies. Babies and toddlers, they explore, they find ways to entertain themselves. This is really just more if you're kind of feeling like, geez, I just want to vary things up a little bit today, or I want to think about rotating out some materials, or, kind of just doing some like one-on-one floor play, and I want some ideas for that. Here are a couple of ideas that you can use. So one is super simple. And you can just use materials that are found around your home. So I set aside a cap from yogurt. I have a Tupperware lid. I have a milk cap. So they, they kind of have some different textures and some different thicknesses. And the activity is really simple. You would put these out either on the floor or on your child's high chair tray or at a table if your, older child is sitting or standing at a play table. And you would just put them flat. And the idea is basically that they then need to learn how to manipulate things so that they can use their fingers intentionally to be able to pluck that up from the flat surface. And then of course they're just going to explore these. They're going to chew on them. They're going to turn them over back and forth. They're going to maybe try to stack them or do something else. And so manipulating those things also requires them to be able to grip in a couple of different ways. So they might be incentivized to use kind of that pincher grasp. And then also for ones that are slightly smaller, if you think about that idea of developing grip strength, that requires both that tension and also the ability to hold that muscle tension to hold something. And so you also want to be thinking about this relative to the size of your child's hand. Obviously, things that are too large, they're not going to be, relative to the size of their hand, they're not going to be able to get as good of a grip on or as easy of a grip on. And so you can kind of experiment with those different objects, again, kind of using that guidance of what things you want to pay attention to a little bit more closely to be able to help them develop that grip strength. So flat objects on a flat surface, just collect some things from around your home. And that's a nice little activity to help them develop those skills. The second one is kind of fun, and this is definitely that first one was definitely for the 6 through 18-month-old set, although again, they'll kind of work with those things in different ways. This one also is, really adjustable for, for all ages of inchworms through grasshoppers. And basically the idea is that you would just tie a string or a ribbon to an object, and help them learn the idea of needing to grab something and then kind of do that hand over hand to be able to haul it into them. Or, grabbing the string and bringing it back and then maybe grabbing the string again and then bringing it back. And so you could do these things in a couple of different ways. If you have a, not really sitting yet to like 6 to 8-month-old, they could definitely just be doing some tummy time. You could lay this out on the floor in front of them, put a little, enticing object at the end and then see what they do. They might actually be incentivized to try to use some gross motor skills and try to, crawl or scoot a little bit closer to them. But also they'll start to figure out that cause and effect of being able to pull. And while they're doing that, again, they're working on that ability to be able to grab onto something, keep that grasp, and then be able to manipulate something in their environment to have the kind of result that they want from their action, which is kind of a cool association for them to make. So, just use some objects that you might have around your house. This is one of those times when I'm really glad that I keep all of the bits of ribbon and things like that happen to come our way. The other kind of variation of this, especially for babies or young toddlers who are in the phase of being able to like stand up in their crib, maybe you're in there folding laundry or hanging out or doing something, and you could actually just, again, while they're awake, you'd want to remove these before they would sleep, but you could tie these to the top rail of the crib and throw them overboard and see what your standing up or cruising baby is able to do to be able to figure out how to haul those things back up again. So kind of a fun little variation. This next one is definitely for like maybe the older inchworm set and definitely the grasshopper set, pipe cleaners and a colander. So using objects that you might have around your home and being able to use those fine motor skills to do one of two things. I mean, the first level here is just to set it up so that you have maybe a bunch of them all threaded through, and then your very curious baby or toddler is going to practice grabbing them and pulling them out. Whether or not they can actually get them back in again is probably a skill for a little bit of like the older set, or definitely, some of those much more fine motor skill oriented inchworms, which I know we have a couple of those too. So that kind of can go in and out. You're going to see them wanting to flip it over, figure out how to pull it through. All of those things are really good activities for them, again, to be able to see that cause and effect action of what it is that they're doing and to provide that incentive for them to work on that, both that grip strength and that pincher grasp. So that's an easy one. The next thing that I want to mention is really anything that encourages pointing. And this can be, you really reinforcing that skill when you're out for a walk, when you're sitting outside on a blanket and you're pointing up at things in the sky, when your child is trying to initiate communication and pointing at things that they might want you to get for them. That ability to point and to poke is a really great skill for fine motor skills development. And so I just wanted to highlight these books are actually available at Blani, and they're still doing both curbside pickup and stork delivery within Rhode Island. But books like this are really fun because, there's the different levels. There's the cool pictures, there's the cool vocabulary you can be talking about, and then there's just kind of this very satisfying little poke that you can do. And once you demonstrate that for your baby, usually that's a pretty easy thing for them to be able to pick up. This one happens to be my daughter's favorite, the dinosaur one. So that's a really great thing to incentivize using that pointer finger. The other thing that works really well for that is bubbles. So bubbles are fun to chase, bubbles are fun to watch, bubbles are also fun to pinch to pop, to clap between your hands to pop. So again, just being able to have that mastery over your hands, or to be able to poke to pop, especially if they land on a surface, and then you can show them how they poke. So just some ideas to kind of get them using those pointers, but that's a really good incentive too. The last thing I want to talk about are, just a couple of ideas to work on grip strength. And so as I mentioned, you want to look at relative sizes of objects, but things that have a little bit of squish, a little bit of a squishy ball, a clementine, an orange, those are all things, especially the ones that have a little bit of weight to them, that are great practice for them to be able to grip onto and pick up. You might add another element to that, like putting them in a bowl or like in a muffin tin, or, just in and out of a box or something like that. The other thing that's kind of fun, if you happen to be toward the end of one of these guys, you can wash it out and you can actually just fill it with water and like a little bit of gentle soap, dish soap, whatever you would want to use. Shake it up so that there's some bubbles inside, and then open it and demonstrate how when you squeeze, and they might even do it like this, but when you squeeze, some of that kind of almost like bubble snake comes out. This is a fun bath time one. If you have any other squeezy toys around, that you use in the bath, or that you have set aside, being able to squirt water out, because again, they see that cause and effect of their actions, which helps to reinforce what it is they're doing, and it helps to get them to practice that squeezing. So in another note about that, that's also a really great way to redirect some of that impulse. If you see them squeezing you, squeezing the dog, squeezing, another child that might be in their home, thinking about that idea that behaviors are usually a request for that type of input, coming up with some creative ways for them to get that, get those squeezies out, is a really helpful way to redirect some of that behavior away from something that's hurtful. So I hope that this provides a couple more ideas for you guys to kind of vary up your days as we're kind of all still staying at home. I hope you guys all are well, and as always, please reach out if you need anything. Take care.